Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is where we discuss about social issues that cut across the socioeconomic status. If you've not subscribed to my YouTube channel, kindly subscribe, leave a comment. Let's get to engage each other and get to know each other. As I promised, this year we'll bring very informative videos on matters that affect all of us. And it is my prayer that all these videos that we are doing and posting, they'll at least impact somebody's life. Today I have a guest. I want us to talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and the relationship between PTSD and addiction. I have a guest, a lady. It's an honor to host this lady. She has been my mentor. She has been my lecturer while I was doing my course on addiction. And it's a numbering moment that to have her engage, we engage, and she shares an orange with all of us. I'll allow her to introduce herself and pick it from there. Karibu.
Thank you very much, Jani. Catherine Muthiani is my name. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm delighted and humbled at the same time to have my student to call me to share with the world what we know and something that can benefit the society. I am a counseling psychologist as well as an internationally certified addiction professional. I work with an institution where we empower counseling professionals through capacity building in matters to do with addiction and mental health at school workplaces, as well as also training in academic programs for addiction, where I serve as the head of training and the clinical coordinator. So thank you very much, Jani. What we have to discuss today is a topic that is close to my heart, close to my patients, and I hope as we get to talk about it, many people will see themselves and see their loved ones and to be better support to them.
Kindly, Catherine, tell us what is PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right. Thanks, Jani. Maybe before we look at post-traumatic stress disorder, allow me to talk about trauma, because it's trauma that leads to post-traumatic stress disorder.
Sure.
So when we are talking of trauma, these are experiences or incidences that we go through on our day-to-day life. It could be an accident, it could be a loss of a loved one, it could also be sexual abuse that people go through. And then when they go through that, their perception about the incidents is now what determines whether they will develop PTSD or not. Why? Because if it challenges their coping mechanism, if they are not able to process the events and they are having difficulties in living their day-to-day life and functioning at individual level, functioning at workplace, functioning in relationship, then we can say that they have been traumatized. So the event that causes challenges in coping is one of the starting points for PTSD to develop. So what is PTSD? PTSD is a mental disorder which results out of exposure to a critical incident, acts of terrorism, accidents, war, domestic violence, and at times also because of living in an abusive relationship or children growing up in places where the parents are abusing drugs can be an entry point for possibility of PTSD to happen. So the event must be there, and then with the event now comes the symptoms that must be present. We can only say PTSD occurs a month after the critical event or the debilitating event happen. Like, let's say somebody loses a loved one. So we know the grieving process, but if someone is constantly finding it difficult to eat, finding it difficult to take care of themselves, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then 1 month elapses, and they are still having challenges in coping and dealing with the occurrence of the loss, then we can say they are presenting with symptoms of PTSD. Because before PTSD happens, we have what we call acute stress disorder.
Yeah.
Because it's normal to be stressed after a loss of a loved one. It's normal to be stressed after, being mugged at gunpoint. It's normal to be stressed after an accident and to have those flashbacks about the event. But now when this continues and somebody has not developed better coping mechanisms a month after, then we now start saying that it could be possible that it is PTSD. So now the 1 month criteria, very significant after the event has occurred. But other symptoms now we will pick to tell whether someone has PTSD is when they start avoiding the situation that could be reminders of the event.
Okay.
Like, let's say you got mugged on a certain street, avoiding that street. Or whenever you get something that is similar to it, somebody starts to develop this sort of paralyzing fear. So that they don't get re-triggered, they tend to, either avoid the actual situation, or the avoidance also can be manifestation of somebody does not have a recount of what really happened. So that is one of the symptoms that we can identify of possibility of PTSD happening. And the avoidance could even also be in conversations around the event. Like, if we talk of death, people don't want to talk about it. So this is a way in which someone is finding as a way of coping, though it may not be healthy, because we say when you process it is when now you are able to sort of move on from that stuck point and probably to be able to face life more rationally. Then the other symptom that we can identify to say if someone has PTSD is when they have these intrusive thoughts and memories. You don't want to think about it, but somehow you keep on having flashbacks of it. If someone maybe has gone through a rape incident, they keep on having flashbacks of the person, the perpetrator, of how it happened, uncontrolled. You're sleeping and you're having nightmares about it. So that is an indication of possibility of PTSD. Also, again, what you may find is somebody disconnects with reality. Like, you ask the person which day it is, and they don't even know. It's not that they can't remember, but at that given point in time, they are so disoriented and detached from themselves that they are not able to carry on activities of day-to-day living. Somebody that may have also been exposed to traumatic incidences, they may become very sensitive in terms of how they react to things. Like, you may find if I touch you, and maybe you went through an abuse, you get very easily startled. If a door bangs, somebody jumps. If somebody maybe was involved in a terrorism attack, whenever they will hear a blast, that becomes something to really distress them. Other things that change is the mood of the person. Somebody may be very irritable, as well as also when you look at the perception of things, they may be having this skewed view of things, either blaming self or blaming other people. Even a voice of reason doesn't happen with them. So those are some of the ways in which we can pick if possibly somebody has gone through PTSD. And as the mood changes, somebody will start now losing interest in their day-to-day activities, maybe withdrawn, and they are just seeming like they are disconnected with the world. But we can't say really with the presentation of all those symptoms, say that yes, it's PTSD. We have also to check, is it affecting somebody's working? Is it affecting how people are relating with other people in their life? Is it also affecting how they view themselves? So if it is affecting them to a very large extent, then there we have a cause for concern, and we have ruled out other possible explanation. Then we can say this person is really stuck at some point in their life. And maybe it's time that, even if it's not professional help, it's time for them to talk about the incidents, time to reach out to a friend, explain how things have been happening, to a family member, or seek professional help.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I want to ask you this. As you've spoken, a viewer there will see it, and they start diagnosing themselves. They will start saying, startled, all these things. What would you advise such a person?
Knowing the symptoms is very helpful, because it will put you in a space to know, I am probably not okay, and I need to do something about it. So if it is now someone who is doing a checklist, and at times we tend to go to Google to look at the symptoms for ourselves, and we get to find some shocking symptoms there that make us feel like our problem is worse than it actually is. The moment you start seeing that you have these symptoms, like I've said, it will be good if you reach out to someone, talk about it, because there is a cause of concern. Also, you can now start also putting yourself in a space of wanting to process the event. Did I overcome this, or am I still stuck? What kind of meaning did this event give me? If this is not helping, we have professional counselors that are there that can be able to support. I know we in a country where we think counseling is for the mentally sick people, counseling is for someone like you and I, because every day we go through day-to-day challenges, and some of those day-to-day challenges, in this case when you're talking about trauma, we may feel like they are so ashaming to talk about with any other person. So counseling gives you the space to talk about that in confidence, so you can meet a professional counselor, a psychologist. Some of these services are available in the hospitals where we are. I know now the counties have also incorporated mental health in some of the healthcare settings, so that may be a space to look out there. Or ask a friend. In our churches where we go, when you talk about you need to speak to a counselor, I know you can be connected to the right place. But there are incidences whereby the effect of the trauma is so much that the counselor alone may not be the only person that is supporting you, that you may need the help of a psychiatrist to give you medication. Because like when you are having excessive anxiety and difficulties in sleeping, and also the excessive worry and these constant thoughts are pushing you to the edge, you may need just something to stabilize you, to calm you down, before now you are in a safe space to talk to a therapist.
Okay. Catherine, how do we handle our loved ones when we notice all this and they are very reluctant to seek professional assistance? How do we handle them at home? Take us through that, please.
Thank you for that question. When we have a loved one, that this is somebody that used to be very bubbly, this is somebody that used to be very engaging, and they start to withdraw. Some of the interests that they had before, they no longer have them, or they are suddenly having this don't care attitude. It could mean something happened to them, and because of the stigma around what may have happened, and because some of these things can be a taboo to talk about, the person may choose to keep it in. So instead of asking the person, why are you like this? ask them what happened to you. What can I do to support you? The person that I knew is not the person that I'm seeing now. Is there something I can support you with? And if we see the person still doesn't want to talk about it, engage. I'll start having conversation around maybe them finding someone else they can talk to, like a therapist. With trauma, one thing that gets lost is a sense of safety.
Yeah.
People feel very insecure about their environments. And the safety could be, what if I tell you and you go and tell another person? So ensure that you create that safety of, protecting what the person is telling you, as well as also creating safety of physical space that someone can feel they are protected. Look at this child that they are living with an abusive parent. And every time they see the father walking, because the father, when just in an illustration, if the father has a drinking problem, so the moment they walk in, they start kicking them around, they start abusing them. For this child, what is likely to happen, the child may hide and cave in. So you want to ensure that if you're the adult in this space, before this father comes in, can this child be taken to a different room where they will feel at least protected from whatever, from maybe whatever reaction that would come from the father. So I would say creating a safe space is very essential, but also in a way that you want to understand, starting that conversation with the person from a point of care, not from a point of judgment. Kwa nini umebadilika? Yes.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, Catherine, because people are very judgmental. You tell a person that have been raped, and the first thing they ask you, how are you dressed? Why did you go to a secluded place with this person? Already you are judging that person, which is really the way you've said, instead of helping them out, then they are withdrawing. Is it right, Catherine, if I say, us as parents, we can cause trauma to our children? Is it right if I say that?
Yes. We have what we call childhood traumas.
Yes.
And these traumas have been seen to be very impactful in adults' futures, mental health, general state of well-being, that is physical health, and how somebody functions just as a human being. How can a parent cause trauma to their child? If you're using demeaning words, that's a kind of emotional abuse. And a child may not have that constant memory of it. Like if you're looking at a child that is younger than 6 years, they may not remember, but it is recorded there somewhere in their brain that it is registering that they are not good enough. Sometimes because of what the parents are also struggling with, you find that a parent goes to displace their anger on their child. So they end up, in the name of punishing and disciplining, they end up hurting their child physically. I know we are coming from a generation that will be really beaten, and we now, when we are adult, we start looking at it and somehow we laugh at it, but we look at our parents and we think that there was something absolutely wrong because we were beaten like criminals, which we were not. So that can be a way in which a parent is causing trauma to the child. Other kinds of trauma, when there is neglect, now we are living in a fast world. You know, the mother is working, the father is working, we leave home at 7 or at times at 5, we get home at 9 or 7. We don't know what happened to the children from the moment that we left. We have left them at the care of who? the house helps. They're not their parents. So we have relegated the parenting responsibility. When we get home and a child wants to ask us something, we are like, not now. So you're communicating that you're not available for this child for anything. So even if something happened to this child, you wouldn't know, because all the time is not now. So what you're teaching this person is that if anything happens to you, don't talk about it. Keep it to yourself, and the world is not available to support you for anything. So that in itself is also some imprints of trauma that we are living in this child, because their needs are not getting met. So that's the emotional need. Then we also have the, because of not being privileged, looking at things to do with lack of resources, poverty. If somebody has, and a child has to go to sleep hungry, or they have to be the ones that are thinking, what will we eat with my siblings? And I know you have worked with many of those as you serve. So what kind of mindset is getting set for this child from that very early age, that they are moving and living in a world of lack? And that poverty and lack of provision will predispose them to other risks. Like in some of the slums, the other day I was disheartened to hear that there is sex for water. Sad. Very sad indeed. And this, the child is looking for basic survival, but also getting exposed to some other vulnerabilities. So parental neglect may be a cause of childhood trauma.
My fears you've had, us as parents, me not excluded in that analogy of being a parent, we might or we may be causing trauma to our children. And also our phones are really contributing into that. Because I'm very busy on Facebook and WhatsApp, and the child comes sure to ask something and I push them aside. Can you tell us this? How does it transition now from trauma into addiction?
Right.
We can first define what is addiction. Tell us,
we say there's a very close correlation between trauma and addiction. Some traumas that may happen in childhood, or even traumas that we get to experience as adult and in our developmental path. As we looked at what trauma is in the beginning, can happen at any point in our life. So how does it connect with addiction? Let me talk about what addiction is. Addiction, unlike what many people tend to think, addiction is a disease. Addiction is a condition that people struggle with. That it's not just a disease of just anywhere. It's a disease of the person's brain. And for those that have been in my spaces, I always throw this question: would you rather have your brain sick or have your hand chopped off? And people will immediately say, I would rather lose my hand. But when people develop addiction, something has changed in how their brain communicates. Something has changed in how they respond to things that are seen to otherwise be rewarding. So we'd say it's a brain disease that is chronic, that if someone has an addiction, and there's a certain criteria that has to be met, because it's not everyone that uses substances we can say is addicted. So the disease being chronic means that somebody can have an episode of when not drinking, when not using their drugs of choice, or when not engaging in the addictive behavior, and boom, just like someone who is diabetic may have moments that they have managed it so well, and then the symptoms start happening again, that someone with addiction can relapse and they go back to using substances. One of the things that makes addiction very unmanageable, it's because of the compulsive nature of it. It makes people lose a sense of control. we say people still continue to engage in their addictive behavior or take their drug of choice despite the negative consequences. And this many families don't understand. Like, clearly you have been told you get fired because of your drinking, and you move from that office carrying the warning letter and you go to the bar to drink because you are about to get fired for drinking. You can see how sick a mind that is, because the addiction tends to compromise a very important area of our mind or our brain that helps us in making decisions. That is why the compulsivity comes in. That is why the lack of, just stopping when somebody wants comes in. So if we are looking at the criteria to say that someone has met for having an addiction, we may find that someone is using the drugs or the substances in long duration of time than they had intended, in hazardous situations. In our Kenyan context, people will drink and drive and say, Gary Najua.
True, which is very sad.
Yes.
Yeah.
You will also find that somebody now, it's like their life and other activities in their life become replaced by their drug, by their addiction. Somebody used to spend time with their family members. They are thinking a moment with my friends at the bar is more important than a weekend out with my family. When someone now has to a lock, they must drink before they can function anything, or they must use the drug before. If someone has been using bang, for instance, they can't sleep before they have smoked. So there's a level of dependency on the drug. Or someone starts using more of it. They started with 4 drinks. Now, for them to feel like they have had a night out of drinking, somebody is now doing 10, or they graduated from beers, now they are doing whiskeys. There is a cause of concern. And when someone is having these cravings, it's like, kama ni pombe inamuita. And they can't function without it. We say now, here we have an addiction problem. So there are different ways in which, as professionals, we are able to check if this is an addiction. Do we have a cause for concern? Or do we need to say that maybe we give him information, talk about the risks that are coming with it, or now someone needs more structured support to help them in quitting their addiction. So we can say it's a chronic, relapsing brain disease that people continue to engage in it despite the glaring negative consequences.
Thank you so much for that.